Hello, everyone, and welcome to Baker & McKenzie's Labor and Employment video chat series, The Employer Rapport. The Employer Rapport is our series of chats focused on hot topics in the workplace, and this is where you'll hear quick and practical tips from Baker's employment attorneys on today's most pressing issues for employers as we navigate the new normal. My name is Goli Rahimi, and I'm an attorney in the firm's Chicago office. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, Bill Dugan, also from the Chicago office, and Robin Samuel from our Los Angeles office. I'm going to be chatting with Bill and Robin today about issues and questions that employers are facing now that vaccines are steadily becoming more widely available, maybe to a large portion of their workforce. So I'm going to start today with Robin. Robin, if employees have already been vaccinated, do they still need to wear a mask and socially distance?
Yeah, great question. I think the answer is, for now, yes. Employers should still enforce social distance requirements, mask requirements in the workplace for a couple of reasons. One, while the initial data, especially out of Israel, is very promising and tends to show that people who are vaccinated cannot spread the virus to others, or at least the rate of transmission is greatly reduced. That data is not yet conclusive, and there's no official position or guidance coming out of the EEOC on that issue or the CDC yet. So for now, caution is required, and you have to assume that even though employees are vaccinated, they can still transmit the disease to others in the workplace, or customers or clients can transmit the disease to your employees. And therefore, everybody in your workplace should still be wearing a mask and socially distancing. And second, I think there's just a kind of a comfort factor here that, we've kind of gotten used to walking into stores and seeing people behind the counter or supermarkets or shops wearing masks. And so I think, from an employee morale perspective and even a public relations perspective, it's going to be good for you to continue demonstrating compliance with all of these mandates, even after the majority of your workforce is vaccinated.
Thanks, Robin. Now I'm going to direct my next question to Bill. Bill, what about the flip side of this? What if employers have employees who are vaccinated, but these employees refuse to wear a mask or refuse to socially distance at work?
Well, I don't think you treat them any different than you treat employees who have not been vaccinated. And by that, it means they have to wear a mask. As Robin said, we just don't know, how effective the vaccines are. And, right now, the recommendations are to continue wearing a mask even if you've been vaccinated. And so, employers should keep the same protocol in place for employees that have been vaccinated, for employees that have not been vaccinated. And for the ones that have been vaccinated, that refuse to wear a mask at work, you wouldn't let them into the facility. And that goes the same with vendors and customers, as well. I mean, on a practical level, also too, if some folks have masks on at work and some folks don't, it's going to cause just general problems because you are going to have the employees that say, well, Jane Smith said that she's been vaccinated, but I know that she hasn't been and that she's lying and she doesn't have to wear a mask and I shouldn't have to wear one, either. So it's going to cause just your general run-of-the-mill employee problems. But more importantly, again, the data is just not out there yet. And, the vaccinations, yes, seem very effective. We do not know if they can be, if you can transmit, again, even if you're vaccinated. So you treat those employees like everyone else. And if they refuse to wear a mask, employees, vendors, customers, they're not allowed in your premises.
Definitely, that's very true. And I think there's a lot of chatter out there about individuals who have had COVID-19 and recovered. They have these antibodies and they don't need to be vaccinated. But Robin, let me ask you, what about those people, those employees who have had the disease, they've recovered? Should those people also be vaccinated?
Yeah, the current guidance says that they should be. Now you don't rush out right as soon as you've recovered from COVID-19 and get a vaccine. There's a prescribed time period you're supposed to wait before you get vaccinated after you've had the disease. And same thing for certain treatments. If you're treated with monoclonal antibodies or certain other treatments, you're supposed to wait 90 days before you get vaccinated because of the potential interaction of the treatment and the vaccine. But in general, because we don't yet know how long natural immunity lasts once you've had the disease, we don't yet know whether if you get one variant of COVID-19, you are then protected against other variants. All of the guidance says that people who've had the disease should still be vaccinated. And so if you are going to have an employer policy that requires employees to be vaccinated, you might have a short-term exception for someone who's been tested positive for COVID-19. But in the long run, you want all of your employees to be vaccinated, even if they've had the disease.
And to promote that policy, Robin, that you just referenced, a lot of employers have employees who don't want to be vaccinated, so they need to do something about it. Those employers seem to be offering sorts of incentives. So Bill, can you talk a little bit about what these companies are doing to provide incentives to individuals who don't really want to be vaccinated?
Sure, and I think that here for our conversation today, obviously we're talking what's going on in the U.S. Because very different rules outside the United States. So just to be clear, what we're discussing here is what general approach we've seen in the marketplace for U.S. employers, and obviously from a legal perspective, as well. I think a lot of employers are looking at this as sort of like a three-tiered approach right now, or phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. There's different terminology, but it's all on the same concept. I mean, the first sort of phase or tier that employers are looking at right now are they do have employees that are excited about getting vaccinated, and they don't need incentives or anything else to stand in line. In fact, I know a lot of clients are fielding calls, human resources from employees of where is the vaccine available, are we eligible, are we an essential worker within a different state? Because obviously different states have criteria of who receives the vaccines, in what order. So generally you have that employee population that are excited, and they'll voluntarily go out and get the vaccine. And that's sort of like where many employers are now, sort of in that tier 1, phase 1, because vaccines, again, depending upon where you are in the United States, they may or may not be readily available. But for the ones that can get it and they want to get it, employers are by all means behind those employees who want to go out and voluntarily be vaccinated. I think the second tier, which goes to your question, Goldie, the second tier is, what about incentives? And we're kind of looking at this as the 2-tier approach or the phase 2 approach, which you have seen employers engage in this. And basically we call it the carrot approach. So it's not for the employees that want to run out and automatically get vaccinated because they're excited about it. It's for employees that need that little bit of nudge, as we say, are slow to say yes sometimes. And it's, again, offering some sort of small incentive within the United States, again, encouraging employees to get vaccinated. And that has ranged from everything from, a small $25 gift card to a limited amount of paid time off, from work. And we've seen, again, different employers in the news that are offering different small incentives to their employees. And again, that's perfectly permissible, in the United States. And Robin will talk a little bit in a minute and a little more detail on that. But the third approach, which again, from surveys we've done, this is a very, very limited approach right now. We're talking like probably 1% of companies that we've seen do this. It's the tier 3 or the phase 3 approach. And that's when, vaccines are readily available and anyone essentially can get a vaccine at any time. We're not in that, in that phase yet. But that is the tier 3 or phase 3, which sometimes we call the stick approach, where companies will not allow anyone on their premises, whether it's an employee, whether it's a customer, whether that's a vendor, without being vaccinated first. And that does have pitfalls of its own that employers will have to be concerned about. But right now, frankly, vast majority of employers are not at tier 3 or phase 3, just on the practical, even if they want to be there, just on the practical level that many people cannot get the vaccine yet.
Now, Robin, for those employers that are at tier 2 who want to follow the carrot approach, as Bill said, what are some things that these employers should consider if they do decide to provide incentives?
Yeah, the law regarding providing employees with incentives for wellness programs is very much in flux. But I predict that we're going to get some specific guidance on incentives for COVID-19 vaccines from the federal government here sometime in the near future. More generally, the EEOC has put out regulations over the years that have either been struck down by courts or most recently withdrawn by the EEOC in the context of wellness programs. And basically, employers can have wellness programs that encourage employees to participate in health and wellness programs on a voluntary basis. And the EEOC has taken the position that if you make the incentives for participation in those programs so rewarding that it is an actual penalty or disincentive to not participate, then it can be problematic because wellness programs have to be voluntary. And there's an exception for employer sponsored healthcare wellness programs as well. So it's kind of convoluted, but basically all of those regulations have now gone away because of the change in the administration. And it's not yet clear what the EEOC is going to do. I do think that when you're offering incentives to employees for COVID-19 vaccines, you don't want to go overboard. You do want to try to just keep in mind that there has been problems in the past with offering too much of an incentive. But again, I think also that the federal government is going to take a position on this because business groups have already asked the EEOC and other branches of the government to weigh in on incentives for COVID-19 vaccines. And there's a lot of good reasons for the government to do that. I mean, if employers can offer incentives to encourage vaccination, I think everyone is going to be helped by that rather than hurt by it. And so unlike the general wellness program considerations with discrimination and disability, the vaccine incentives are somewhat unique. So more to come on this. Right now, there's not a lot of guidance out there that employers can rely on. You should obviously consider employees with disabilities who cannot be vaccinated for medical reasons, and try to find some kind of incentive that's equally rewarding for those employees if they take other safety measures besides being vaccinated or allowing them to get the same incentive. And I think you should also keep in mind kind of the pay obligations that go along with vaccines in terms of whether they're mandatory or voluntary, but certainly encourage employees to be vaccinated. Just don't go overboard in rewarding them for doing so.
And Bill, I'll direct our final question to you. What are your thoughts on employers needing to provide paid sick leave to employees who might need to recuperate from symptoms after they've been vaccinated?
Sure. I think the first thing that employers would do, whether it's sick leave related to vaccinations or any other type of sick leave, is check your local law. Because unfortunately here in the last several years, it's become obviously very difficult for employers on paid sick leave because you get down to the city, county, state levels. It varies all over the country. Obviously here in Chicago, we not only have the Cook County ordinance for sick leave, we have the Chicago for sick leave, and there's others as well. And I know Robin's sitting out in California. I don't have to tell folks out there the myriad amount of sick leave laws that are present. So assuming that you aren't required under your local law to provide sick leave, you don't want to do anything that would discourage your employees from number one, getting the vaccine, and number two, you don't want to discourage them from staying home while they recover from the symptoms. And so I think if you keep those two kind of general things in mind, that's going to dictate the approach. And one thing that we have seen, again, this is not for companies that are not required to provide sick leave, is one option that we've seen is that some employers provide a hard line of 3 days off if employees are showing symptoms from the vaccine, because depending upon the vaccine, people can have symptoms that frankly mimic the symptoms of COVID-19, whether that's high fever, whether that's fatigue, other symptoms from COVID-19, but they do, obviously recover, pretty quickly. Again, so you may want to do a simple approach with, maximum of 3 days, because that does put a limit on it, but also, encourages folks to get the vaccine and then frankly to stay at home if they've and not work while they're at home if they're having adverse effects from the vaccine.
Yeah, that one's really interesting to me because you don't quite know if that employee's symptoms of a fever and lack of energy, et cetera, are from the vaccine. We hope they're from the vaccine and not because they were independently sick with COVID-19. So you're not going to let them into the workplace if they have a fever. You're going to make them stay at home if they have other COVID-19 symptoms. So it's kind of hard to distinguish between the two there. And providing sick leave is one good way to deal with that.
Well, thank you again, Bill and Robin. And for our audience, we hope that you will watch the other videos in this series, The Employer Report, where we share insight into various employment-related issues. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.